Okay, so we're going to start with our demonstration of ViewMaker with starting with creating a master page, a layouts folder and master page. So we have a fresh install of Laravel here, and you can see there isn't a layouts folder. Basically, I just have it hooked up to a database. I set the settings in the .env file, and that's pretty much it. So it's just a brand new install, and we're going to start with our first artisan command, which is make master. So let's go to the command line, php artisan make master, and we'll call our master page master. I know that's kind of redundant, but that's how I like to do it. And then we're going to call the application Gizmo. If you don't want to give it an application name, just leave that parameter off. It'll default to demo. And that's pretty much it. We're going to get our master page now. We'll go ahead and look at what we've created here. So I'm going to refresh the folder here, and you can see there's a layouts folder and a whole bunch of files. We've got a bunch of things extracted out to partials. I'm not going to go into detail on this now, but I will later. This is just to get us started so we can move on to the next step and play with Make Foundation. Okay, so we're ready to move on and create our first foundation. And we're going to do that around this concept of a widget, which is just an example model that we use. And we'll go ahead and supply that as one of the arguments. So make foundation, and the model name is widget. And we're going to extend the master page that is named master, and we're going to use the view template. So those are the three arguments that we supply. The first one is model, the second one is the master page name, in our case master, and the template we want to use, which is view. So go ahead and return, and all files successfully created. The next thing we're going to want to do is go ahead and migrate up to the database so we have this data structure available to us. So php artisan migrate. And you can see that we got the users table, the password resets, and of course the widgets table, which we just created. That's part of the foundation. So the next thing we're going to do, we can do a quick unit test since the foundation created the unit test for us. And unit tests in Laravel work right out of the box if you didn't know. So there's really no big setup or special knowledge that you need for this. You just run it. It's in the vendor/bin/php unit, and you just run that, and bam, we got green. And that's also created a record in the database. So we could potentially look at the UI right now and the views we created, but we want to go one extra step, which is to use the factory method that Foundation has also created for us. So we'll get into artisan tinker here and run the factory method there. So let's see, app \widget model name, and of course this is already created for us by Foundation, so you don't have to create this factory method, and that's just a real time saver, as you're going to see here in a second. So now we run that, and we've got a fully seeded database, 30 records. I'm going to exit Control D to exit out of Tinker, and now we're ready to take a look at the UI that we created. So you can see what this page looks like before I had run the foundation. The route doesn't resolve, and there's literally nothing there. But now, since we ran foundation, created the model, the routes, the factory method, the controller, the views, the API controller, now everything's in place. So when we hit refresh, we get a fully populated data grid, and you can see how cool that is. So come down here, you can see the pagination works. I made this part pretty robust. It's not styled beautifully necessarily, but I wanted to keep that real basic, so you could put in your style however you want to do it. Kept the CSS to a minimum. You can go to whichever page you want. All of this works. Hit the button and go to page 3. Now we're on page 3. If I come up here and I column sort, you can see it's column sorting, and the pagination works for that. If I do the search, it'll reduce it down. See, now there's only 11 results, and that's 2 pages, and the pagination works on that. So you can see it's a fully functioning data grid. Some of the other things that we created here, obviously this is a full CRUD app at this point. You can create a new widget. Let's just call it new widget, and then you'll see that that's in there. Go ahead and hit create, and if I go to my last row, got new widget in there. So you can see that's pretty cool. And then edit that. You just hit the edit button, and let's just call it good widget. Can't really think of anything, so we'll just put that in there, and now it's edited to that. And this, of course, is the show page. So from the show page, you could edit, and you can also delete. So you get the breadcrumbs, you go back to that, and we've got the full data grid. So this is what Foundation is standing up for us. Obviously, this top part here where it says Gizmo, that's my app name. This has been created by the make master command, which also gave us all the dependencies that we need. So this is what you're getting at. You see the two processes put together between make master and make foundation is less than a minute, and you can get this whole thing up and running. And we've got a lot of other great commands that'll facilitate your workflow, but you can see just how fast you can start to prototype and work with your data. And obviously, if you have more column names and things like that, if you want to go in and make those modifications, you would do that. Let's say when you were before running the migration, you wanted to add some extra tables or columns to your tables. So you might do a table, and let's just call it a string named body, for example, and and that's it. And then you would run your migration. You would add that to your model. So you would come over to here. I'm just giving you an example. Into the model. I'm giving you an idea of workflow here. This isn't necessarily any suggestion of what to do, but then you would add it there. So Eloquent knows they can accept that since that's a fillable property at this point. And then of course you'd have to make changes into your controller to validate and accept those parameters. But the thing is, you can see how much of this work is already done for you. All you're going to do is add a line here, and then add a line here, and you're done. I mean, obviously, you'd have to do it also for the edit method. But you can see just how fast this workflow is. The Foundation stood up a working controller for you. It stood up an API controller, which handles your view data request. And I have one in here for data tables as well. If you want to switch out and use data tables, it's a popular jQuery library. You can do that. If you're not using it, you can just delete. You can delete that one. No sense in keeping a method you don't need in there. But I put it in there just for convenience if you want to play around with it. Obviously you're getting the routes. You can see we got a resource. I'm sorry, it's down here. We got a resource on widget, and we've got the API routes for the widget as well. If you want to see the factory method that it created, again, we are getting some blank spaces because I do a lot of trial and error with this, so you don't get to see all the mistakes I make. But anyway, I have the remove commands, and sometimes the remove commands are putting in some blank spaces. You might be able to fix that in a later version. But anyway, you can see the factory method is here. It's all built for you. And then, of course, the views. And the views get into, let me just refresh this down here. You get a real nice implementation of view.js. It's pretty complicated, I guess. It's not really complicated, but it's pretty involved because to get all those column sorts and the pagination and all that stuff working from Ajax, there's a lot to that. So there may be a better way to do this. This is stuff you could refactor. Here's the component. You could extract that out if you're using Elixir, or you want to set that up in a JavaScript file in your public folder. You can do that as well. Same thing with the CDN calls. You can extract those out, use CDN or not use it. It's really up to you. And I've set this up so it just gives you the minimum implementation, so you can make all those decisions for yourself. And then you can see you get a nice result. It stands up very quickly, and that's pretty much it. We'll get into some more of the other commands and what else this will do for you in a later video. And that's it for now. Thanks for watching.